Perfection. That was his focus, his creed, his aim. He had come so close to achieving his goal. His actions on his patients filled a void, then self-mutilation replaced it. Finally, he had begun performing the surgery on himself. The cadaver count had become too high. The arbitrators had begun a systematic crackdown looking for the killer. Each level of the sub-hive was being swept, cleansed of heretical practices. This was where the desperate and weary came to reside. This was where their hopes and dreams came to die. Willingly or unwillingly, it did not matter. To Arasmus Gould, his aspirations died a long time ago. His dreams had taken center stage to a life devoid of meaning, of purpose, of joy. It had begun so simply, so innocently, he mused, as he lay here bleeding out, a shotgun blast to his core, an open invitation to his imminent demise. His life flashed across his eyes, the lids of which he had carefully removed with a fresh scalpel. To blink would be to invite the flashes of memory to haunt him. His body glove, for no skin shrouded his torso anymore, oozed fresh runnels of blood from an evacuated blast wound that vented his stomach to the air. The body glove was rotting, graying flesh sutured carefully into neat folds of decaying matter. Replacement parts for excised pieces he felt needed removing. As he lay there bleeding out, life fluid fleeing a dying parody of humanity, Erasmus considered his life up to now. His career as a biologian, a medicae, specialism in surgical repair. Such waste. Such potential lost. He should have been more, done more. He began to consider one horrifying thought as life fled his slowly dying corpse. How did the dreams lead to this? How did that first voice, those first words, cause his fate? Erasmus woke up with a start, a shuddering breath from his mouth as his heart began to slow down from the near-fatal pulse rate his nightmares had caused. A single sentence, spoken by a spirit not of this world, plagued his memory. He does not see your potential, but I do. He felt ludicrous. He had not had a nightmare this visceral, this barbaric since his childhood. The words were the same back then. They haunted his sleeping hours. As a child, starving, living day by day in the dregs of the underhive, he made a living sewing up las and blade wounds with his deceased father's medicae kit. He had become very good at it, eventually taking over his father's impromptu medicae unit down in the slum levels. The local hive gangs classed his domicile as neutral territory. It was hard to find a skilled medicae down here, and Erasmus clearly had a talent for it. He saved up enough coin to get a new identity and a temporary address in the mid-hives, enough stature in local community to afford him conscription into the Departamento Medicae. From there, he served time on the front lines, as a surgeon dealing with all manner of wounds inflicted on the guardsmen of the Astra Militarum, infected pustules from Xenos exposure, lasgun wounds from renegade militia, even an orc warblade embedded in an Ogren bodyguard. He asked the abhuman about the wound, who, in poor low Gothic, replied, "You should see the orc that did it." All his service, his dreams had never plagued him as they once did. He hoped they never would again. Then, Disgrace came. It started simply, a misdiagnosis on a Militarum colonel. What he initially considered a bad cache of trenchfoot turned out to be Nurgle's rot. It decimated an entire company and badly weakened an entire section of the defenses of an Imperial firebase. 18,000 lost in a week. Not to the weapons of the enemy, but the spreading contagion. It wasn't his fault. He had barely slept. He was admonished, sent back to his home hive to work as a local medicae surgeon, dealing with the local infections, ailments reported within a PDF regiment, and a lifetime of backwater drudgery. Such wasted potential. Surely this was a test of his virtue, a measure of his zeal placed under the microscope by the god Emperor. His faith had waned. He found solace in a simple thought. Perhaps, just perhaps, he is not worth my prayers. Secretly, he forsook his faith. Then, they returned. As Arasmus wiped the sweat from his brow, he hoped the nightmares would remain as such, only nightmares. Then they invaded his waking hours. He would be conducting reparative surgery on a teen hiver who had an infected bicep from a manufactorum accident, and all he could envisage was this kid's arm, bisected at the elbow, the limb contorted into a form of winged abomination, sinew and ligaments acting as extended fingers, the skin stretching to form a fleshy membrane, elbow and wrist acting as joints in the newly fashioned addition. His assistant grabbed Erasmus's arm as he was about to start excising flesh from the shoulder, unnecessary work on the unconscious patient. It was the third person she had saved from the surgeon's waking nightmares. She did not live long enough to see his true mastery of his planned improvements. It had been so easy to circumvent safety procedures, given the lack of professional oversight. After all, his own departamento had little care about a midhiver, disgraced surgeon. She simply did not return to work the next day. Her body, or what was left of it, was discovered at the bottom of a lifter shaft, utterly devastated by the several thousand-foot drop. The ruling issued that same day by Arasmus himself: accidental death by misadventure. The doors on the lift simply opened up, and she walked out, to embrace the graphitic pull of her own mortality. Then, the first death occurred. A woman, complaining of stomach cramps throughout her advancing years, wished to have surgical intervention, a simple procedure. She was seen entering his clinic, then never again. By the time Arasmus came to, he was covered in her blood, her corpse no longer what you would consider to be of base human stock. She was now just meat. His dream was an alternative role as a butcher, carving up the remains of a juvenile grox devoid of scales and flesh, served up for his command staff to enjoy. Her parts were splayed out for all to see: flanks, calf, ribeye, rump, breast. All had a particular delicacy. His role was simply to prepare the meat from the corpse supplied. His actions rocked him to his foundations. Her body made its way down to the corpse starch manufactories under a different identity. No matter how much he cleaned, he could not rid the thoughts prevalent in his mind. 2, 3 more missing personnel became unwilling subjects to the brutal and violent machinations of Arasmus Gould. They trusted him, trusted his work. He had supplied the hive with reliable Medicaid aid for over 10 years with only a few reported losses. All the while, he self-medicated. Amasec, strong grog and potent cocktails of analgesics and relaxants, just to snatch an extra 10 minutes of uninterrupted sleep. Yet his nightmarish animus gave him inspiration for his next showcase. They filled him with inhuman ideas. He had to take control of his own narrative. He no longer had staff willing to work alongside him. His patient numbers dwindled. He only became a surgeon for the gangers that had now taken root in his hive. He accepted all coin, just so he could afford newer tools and crews of ne'er-do-wells willing to turn a blind eye when disposing of his crimes. Then, it spoke. The voice in his head, once just a shadow of a figment of a whisper, now formed legible words. "You know they don't deserve you. It would be so easy. Their skin is more supple than yours. You could make it work. You have the talent. Now fulfill your heart's desire." He gave in to the whispers. His next kill was a brute, a gang leader, and was not fully unconscious when he tried to take his life. The resultant scuffle and gang assault on his facility wounded Arasmus, with his face carved up. He could hide a body, but not a wound such as that done to his face. The rest of the retribution force sent to eliminate him was subject to worse fates than death. Their echoing cries and screams became nightmare fuel for all those within earshot. Without fresh subjects and with his own body now disfigured, he turned his speciality on another target: himself. He would have to start using his own body to reinvent surgery. He started with those parts that affected him every night: his eyes. He realized he only had his damned visions if he slept, and when he did, his eyes were closed. He made it so he would never need to close them again. He removed implants from a local collection of servitors. They had no need of ocular replacements. He grafted said replacements using a mirror, plenty of painkiller, and a steady hand. He now had full use of the visual range, and without the need to persistently blink to render the fleshy orb suitably moist for use, he removed his need to sleep. He performed procedures using a mirror that the most skilled surgeons in his former departamento would balk at. Yet with all the risks, his need for sleep was permanently excised. He was hopeful it would suffice, but the dreams and voices plagued him still. Hope faded into obscurity. He embraced his own self-devastation and damnation. The desperate and death-dealer gangers now used his services as a matter of last resort. He moved from location to location, never staying longer than a few days. Feared and respected in equal measure, the mutilator of the Midden Hive was on the hushed lips of every hiver on the planet. Where he went, death was a close companion. His rumored actions led to officio sanction, an immediate shakedown by the Adeptus Arbites. Regardless, they were always several days behind him. He did what he could, then moved on. His actions and collection of unwilling patients left a carpet of woe in his wake. For Erasmus, he knew no respite. For his patients, they knew no future, only the cloaked man, with a bag full of instruments and a smile grafted onto skin badly scarred. His left arm had surgical tools grafted directly into his hands. Knives replaced his fingertips. Mechadendrites snaked along ports directly interfaced into his cerebral cortex. The biologian responsible now married to machines without consent. He was no living cogitator, nor a brain-dead servitor. He was now one with his machines. A scream stifled on lips replaced with the grill of a Vox unit. He would act as a klaxon in alarm in case their defenses were breached. Several such unwilling assistants now stalked abandoned halls, gathering biological samples for Erasmus to conduct his work upon. For Erasmus, his fate was accepted. He knew the voices that plagued him incessantly to this day, fueling his desire for self-improvement and those of his patients, were of a creature beyond time and form. Its name had a silent tone to its first syllable. It required a tongue to form the correct intonation within an excised mandible. It came out as a slurring, bubbling collection of hisses and growls only his assistants understood. They silently followed his hardwired commands. Their lobotomized mind slaved to his own. Then the day came, the day of his final action. 17 bodies, all in various states of death and decomposition, lay across battered deck plates lifted to waist height. He would make such a fine display, an epitaph to his skill set, an honored monument to his talents. It took 3 days of constant vigil to complete the work. Whereas previously, when he confronted the voices in his head, they would satiate, allowing him reprieve to escape the enmity of the local enforcement cadres. Such commanding entities refused to let go. The only word he now followed without question: more. He would finish his great work, only for the disembodied entities to show their dissatisfaction. He started again. All the while, the Adeptus Arbites zoned in on his house of horrors. First defense, his assistants. Several had weapons grafted to their bodies. Once unwilling helpers, now hardwired grunts to protect him and his great work. They were significant obstacles to overcome. 3 purgation squads fell at their staunch defense. 3 such parodies of men detonated internal explosives grafted to their spinal cords. Their bodies, once vital signs, had ceased, self-immolated. A collection of twins, not naturally identical, but surgically made to look as such, rushed the 4th squad. Arms replaced with whirling metal blades and weights on whipping chains. Armored and ensconced in metal carapaces, they were hard to kill. It took concerted heavy bolter fire to pull down those 2 macabre sisters. Erasmus, unfazed, finalized his handiwork. His art was nearly at the point of completion. He would unveil it for all to see, for all to bear witness and understand what true horror looked like, and how such a tainted travesty had an innate beauty to it. He never got the chance. Breaching charges detonates in unison, throwing his creations and the last vestiges of his assistance to the 4 cardinal points. An overzealous Arbites captain charged Erasmus. The maddened Erasmus decapitated the man with a swipe of his embedded cleaver in his right arm, cum appendage. 3 shotgun blasts peppered Erasmus. Skin from 3 of his latest victims were torn to ribbons by the ammunition. Yet Erasmus was not yet done. He wrestled with 4 of the remaining purgation squad, bringing 2 to death's cold embrace before his ire and strength of will was spent. An Arbites commander, void-hardened body glove and a bolt gun pointed directly at his terrifying facial location.
"Do you have anything to say before we end your miserable existence?"
The Arbites commander proffered. 3 syllables formed incoherently through ruined facial structure. Blood speckled his non-existent jaw. His mouth was agape, with a stumped tongue almost non-existent. As the Arbites commander depressed the trigger on his weapon, he overheard what he considered to be words from this human abomination. With barely half-heard disdain for himself and his killer, he discerned 3 words, as his ability to speak was rendered moot.
"She who fasts."
The trigger, followed by an echoed blast, slowly brought realization to Arasmus Gould. The visions that flanked his waking sight dissipated, leaving him with the growing reality of his wasted life. How had he let his dreams come to this? Life fled the body of the mutilator of the Midden Hive. Left to rot and decay among the remains of his last victims, a surviving Arbites officer, poorly wounded, went to see a chirurgeon for medical aid. He was sewn up, repaired, and sent home to recover. As he lay there, sleep taking root, a whisper of a voice long forgotten began to echo in his mind. Dark potential filled his heart. Echoes of a former biological artist chuckled in grim reverie. The officer, sweating, unable to sleep, moved to splash a modicum of recycled water on his face. The voice, now a whisper of a voice on the wind, spoke to him.
"He does not see your potential, but I do."